Leah Amico, I'm honored to have you as a guest on the podcast. Welcome to When the Cleats Come Off.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here with you, Ashley.
Me too. I loved getting to know a little bit about your podcasting journey because I know it's a new one, but it sounds like you're loving it so
I
far.
am. I'm enjoying it. It stretches you. I'm sure that you've experienced that as well. It definitely is stretching, but that's what's fun. Us as softball athletes, it's like it's the grind and it's the challenge of it that almost drives you.
100%. 100%. Well, I would be doing all the listeners injustice if I didn't ask you to share a little bit about how you became an Olympian. We've had a few Olympians on the podcast before, and I think everybody has their own unique journey through the game. And I think a lot of people can take away from it. So if you don't mind sharing a little tidbit of, how you got to that big goal of yours, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, well, as a young girl, I started playing here in Southern California. When I was 14 years old was when I won my first national championship with a team out of Southern California. And winning that national championship, that was the first time I realized like I wanted to get a college scholarship. That became my goal. I thought softball was a means to an end. I loved it. I loved being with my teammates. I also loved soccer. I loved it probably just as much. But softball around high school age started opening a lot more doors. So I got recruited by just a handful of schools, not many, but when it's the right ones, it's okay if it's not a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
Arizona happened to be one of them. And I was recruited as a pitcher and a first baseman. So my first year, I went to the University of Arizona, and we ended up getting to the national championship game at the Women's College World Series. And again, I was 18 years old thinking this is the best thing ever, like better than I could have ever imagined. And at
Yeah.
this point, at the World Series, we had a star pitcher, Susie Parra, All American. She was a junior. And so I was just the designated player at that point at the World Series. The entire tournament I just hit. Well, I was in the number 3 spot at that time, and we're playing Lisa Fernandez, UCLA. She's a senior. The expectation was absolutely for them to win. Well, it was a pitcher's duel, and Susie only gave up 2 hits to UCLA, but Lisa only gave up 1 hit. But it was my hit. I got a hit off of her to bring in Amy Chelvold, our leadoff hitter. She got on an air and then was moved to second, and then I got a hit off of Lisa. And to this day, I'm like, that was like a game changer. So for me, like we win the national championship. And I think, okay, this is what it's all about. Like nothing better. And not long after that, they said softball is going to be in the Olympics for the first time ever. And I really believed, since I was able to face Lisa and like get that 1 hit,
Yeah.
I felt like I can be on that team. And that became my goal. And so I started being invited once they opened that process to different Olympic festivals. They had 60 women, younger and older women who have been on the national team for a long time. My sophomore year at college, I ended up making basically the B team. The national team went to Pan Am Games. We went to a Pan Am qualifier. I went to Guatemala, was the leading hitter in that tournament. And then after that, and so then one last part of as well was my sophomore year, Coach Kendra at Arizona moved me to outfield. And I tell everybody the importance of buying in and taking advantage of every opportunity, no matter how challenging it is. I was learning a brand new position, had never played it before. And it was my sophomore year. And by the end of that year, I caught a ball over the fence, saved a home run against Kim Marr, one of my Olympic teammates
That
in
was my coach in
Fresno. And
college. That's
no
crazy.
way,
Yeah.
small world. And so Kim always hit well against us. So I was very thankful when I played with her on Team USA. And so here I was in the outfield, and that's what opened the door, even though I didn't see it at the time. I didn't know it. And so I got to the final tryout. Out of 52 women, I believe, they named 15 of us to the first ever Olympic team. And I just remember thinking, okay, this is my shot. This is everything I've always worked towards. And I heard somebody older saying, oh, this is a time for the older athletes, because there were a lot of women who put their lives on hold. But I remember thinking, no, it's not about age. I'm going to go out and give everything I have. I deserve to be on that team too. And at the end of the day, 7 people were making that decision, right? They were naming the team. And so the goal was just to leave it all on the field and trust the process. And I was blessed and fortunate to make Team USA. And then after that, every year you had to try out. And then every year I would make the team again until my last Olympics in 2004.
Wow, that's such a unique story. And it's crazy that it took until you were in college to realize that you wanted the Olympics because it was finally in front of you. We're in a season now where we don't know when we're going to get it back. We hope it's when we host the Olympics in California. Um, But, it's crazy because when I was growing up, I wanted to be an Olympian from like very young because I was watching. So Caitlin Lowe is like my all-time favorite player of all time. And the only time I got to watch her, I don't want to age myself, was during the World Series or during the Olympics. And so, being able to watch somebody do their thing and play a similar position as me and look a little bit like me and be on the left side, it's crazy. You didn't even have that. It was just, I want to go play college. And then, oh, there's a thing here. Let me go see if I can do this. I think that's so crazy and cool. Um, did you have any role models? I mean, growing up, maybe that didn't play in the Olympics, but that inspired you to want to be as good as you could at the college stage?
No, I didn't even have access like you talked about. That is aging myself, but I'm going to tell you, okay, this is crazy. I'm a lot older. So, when I was in high school, I literally was listening to the game on radio
Yeah.
when Arizona was playing. They came off their first national championship, and it was just different. So my freshman year, they were putting the final game on. That was the only game, and
Mhm.
it was tape delayed. It was tape delayed, and so I remember thinking, "Oh,
Wow.
my friends at home are going to get to see it." But that was the difference. And so I would here's what would happen. I would hear about these star players. I would hear about Gordon's Panthers. They were one of the top travel ball teams. I would hear about Lisa Fernandez. I ended up going to the same pitching coach as Lisa. So I would see her in the summer before I was facing her and knew kind of that whole experience.
Mhm.
So, like you mentioned, being able to see Caitlin and somebody you can relate to, like people say, if you see it, you can be it. It is different, right? Than thinking, okay, I'm just going to figure this out and just take this passion and this love and this drive and be when I hear about the opportunity, I'm going to make that happen. I really didn't have those women to look up to. I didn't know those older athletes because they weren't televised. They were not in front of me. And so I respected, I think when we got to go to some tournaments where the older athletes were playing, I was able to watch a little bit, but it wasn't enough to build these true role models like
Yeah.
athletes have now today. And so that's what was exciting about the Olympic team or the college teams now. These young girls can see them and say, that's who I want to be. That's what I want to do.
Now, I will say you playing for the dream team, you kind of set the standard for role models. Like you're playing with, Jenny Finch, who I hope to get on the podcast one day. But she is still the face of softball, which is wild and crazy. But, as somebody on the dream team, as somebody's role model, what type of responsibility was that like?
I took it as a huge honor. And to me, the gold standard, I talk a lot about the gold standard, but it really is that excellence in every aspect of life. I've been around some top athletes, elite athletes, and they don't care about how other people view them. They don't care about choices they make off the field. Their thing is, I'm going to go play and I'm going to be great, and that's enough. I personally, and it's fine. Everybody has their own choices. I wanted to be somebody who young athletes and moms could say, I want my daughter to grow up and be like that. And so
Mm.
the way I talked, the way I carried myself, the way I interacted with fans after the game, the way I held myself on the field, all of that mattered to me. And so I just feel like this standard was set not just on the field, but off the field as well to be this example and this role model.
Well, you do an excellent job of it still. Like I feel like you still take on that role and responsibility. I have a question about, you've played on the best teams, some of the best, like literally there are magazines with your team on it. So I want to know what qualities those teams have or had, and maybe they were unique to each year. I don't know. But what are some of those unique qualities that make such a great and elite team?
I would say one is drive. The drive and passion to be your very best no matter what. And what that looks like is extra cuts, extra practices. You know what? When it's not my best day, I'm going to put more time in. What do I need to do? Hey, so and so, can you go out and hit with me? Because I need to get some reps in. That's one thing. I would say team unity and chemistry was huge. We might not have all been best friends off the field, but I will tell you that when I was on the Olympic team, I remember thinking, I've never been a part of a team that's got along so well on the field. Now, I say that to say we had moments, we had
Mm-hmm.
times because we're all human, right? Where things came up, but how we dealt with it was much more in a mature way than maybe my collegiate teams had.
Yeah.
And I played on really good collegiate teams, but that's important. Basically the team vision was put before individual visions. And I don't think you always get that everywhere you go. That was important. Major belief. Everyone who was there might have had moments of doubt because I don't know. I personally believe most people do, some less than others, maybe. But at the end of the day, I think every one of us believed not only that we were, the ones to be on that team, but that we were bringing home the gold medal. I think if we just thought, well, we hope to get bronze, I think we would have played at a different level. But
Yeah.
it was gold or nothing. It was literally the gold standard. So unity, belief, that drive, which I believe is that passion, and then just the growth mindset. I'll tell you, because I've been involved with many different aspects of our game at a lot of different levels, and
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some top athletes who are not coachable. And
Mm,
I'm like, that is one of the reasons I became an Olympian. I know it for a fact. And then when I would talk to my Olympic teammates, I was helping coach in the pro league for the USSSA Pride. And Natasha Watley, I'll never forget. She's like, Leah, I'm a little bit off. Watch me. What am I doing? She was my former teammate, but the respect. And so we would ask each other, we would ask our coaches. We always wanted that edge. And so it was always trying to learn and grow on and off the field when it came to our sport. So I'd say that's the fourth thing.
yeah. And you mentioned that buy-in earlier that allowed you to change positions literally in college and still be able to save a game. I had a similar experience. I came in as an outfielder at Purdue, where Kim Marr was my head coach. So crazy. And I played shortstop in high school, but like my love was the outfield. And we had like an All-American outfield when I got there. So this freshman probably not going to play. But I knew there was an opportunity at second base. So I kind of picked up this position. I'm like, well, if I played shortstop, I can figure out second. And I ended up being the starting second baseman and then moving to first base after 2 years, which another position I have no idea. But if you put the team before yourself, it's easy. It's an easy transition. It's going to be tough trying to learn something new, but like, because you have this gold standard of like team before everything, it's like, just do it, like do what's best for the team.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you say that because I saw that on our national championship teams at Arizona. There were a lot of athletes that got moved around, and when they bought in, I have a teammate who was not a big name in our sport, but she was a 3-time first team All-American at 3 different spots. I was at 2 different
Crazy.
spots as well. I went back to first base my senior year, so I pitched 1 year, was center field 2 years, and then first base my final year. And I love you saying that because it really is when you buy in, the opportunities just absolutely grow for you. And so
Yeah.
many people don't want to buy in when change is involved. They actually push against it because it takes us out of our comfort zone. But
Mm-hmm.
you saying that just tells me a lot about, I'm sure, how you've gone on to do other successful things because it really is part of who you are.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I try to still coach to my young players now. It's like, just get used to the uncomfortable. Like if I'm giving you a new drill to make you feel and look kind of silly, well, just buy in. You never know. Like, and sometimes, that becomes their favorite drill. And now they're excited to learn something else that's new. But I think that's, a lot of coaches listening to this. That's your job. It's like push your athlete out of their comfort zone, because we both have testimonies of us going to college and really having to shift positions and our mentality. So I love that. Okay. So your favorite acronym in the world, it seems like, is GOLD. Okay. So your podcast is called the Gold Standard. That acronym, you've talked about it on your own podcast, but I would love to hear your breakdown of the acronym GOLD, because I think it's a game changer and it's simple, but it's something that if you adopt, it could be so beneficial for you in your game.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about just the process and us as Olympians and how we were successful. And one day I was just thinking, and literally it just popped into my head. And so it's an acronym. So G stands for goal setting or goal oriented. And so goals, you have to know what your goal is. I found in my life that when I know what is expected of me and I know the goal, then I can set the plan that gets me there. But if I'm like, well, I just want to be successful and you just leave it open ended, most likely I'm not going to do much at all. And
Right.
so the people so when I got to, Arizona, it was national championship. That's what our goal is. But obviously it's daily. You got to get better and there's things we got to learn and, team chemistry along the way. And so now I've learned that and I've been able to apply that to my personal life. What do I want to do as a speaker, as a writer? What are my goals? What are my dates? What am I striving for? O stands for overcoming obstacles, because there is that perseverance piece, and you have to be resilient. What we just talked about, Ashley, is that changing positions, going through change, being able to adapt, being somebody that's consistent even when it's not going your way, being a problem solver instead of somebody that complains and makes excuses and, in the work. So overcoming obstacles, when you have that part and that resilience, you're going to find ways to be successful. And then L stands for leadership, because I look back, and if it wasn't for the leaders, we would have never ended up. But the leader also set the vision and the goal that started us. And then individually we had, goals. There's leadership that comes from within a group, a team, a company. And then there's leadership, obviously, in the people that are leading the team. And so there's those different levels, but every one of us has the ability to be a leader. And that's what I think is important as well. And then the last thing, D stands for dedication and drive. And I was like, you know what? This is the action component, because you can have so much potential, but if it's not the daily grind and the commitment and being willing to make sacrifices, when you're driven, when you are dedicated, you'll find a way. And if I think about Olympians, and that's one of the things I didn't mention, is I will say they did the most work when nobody was looking. That's what champions are. That's what they do. If you want to see people who have gotten to the highest level, when you listen to people like, Kobe Bryant, and you listen to people like Michael Jordan, and you listen to people like Derek Jeter, and just unbelievable. Lisa Fernandez. I'm going to tell you right now, Lisa Fernandez was one of the most committed, disciplined, dedicated people I've ever met. I trained with her in my last quad. I'd actually had my son, and I came back, and here I have this baby over in a playpen crying, and her and I are at this gym with this personal trainer, and I'm going to the bathroom and throwing up because I got to get my body back in shape, and he's just crushing us. And I will tell you, in those, gosh, from having my son maybe 6 months leading up to making that next world championship team in 2002, after taking, that year off to have my son, I trained with Lisa. It made me, I believe, even better than I was before. And I had 2 gold medals, but that one-on-one, being next to a champion like her, made me that much better. So dedication and drive. So goals, overcoming obstacles, leadership, and then dedication and drive.
Man, that testimony about Lisa gave me literal goosebumps. Like, it does matter who you hang out with. Like, it's crazy, because a lot of, youth players also listen. And, the amount of times that I was even, bullied or told, like, you're never going to be good enough, blah, 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 blah. And I used to hang out with those people every week. And then I realized, like, that is not helping me whatsoever. Like, I want to be around people who grind, people that have big goals for themselves, people that can see and have optimism about, their future. It is super important for those of you listening that have not taken in or really done a little, what do you call, I totally blanking on a word right now, but like a recall on like who you hang out with. Do it. Like, spend that 5 minutes and be like, is this person helping me on my journey or hurting me? Because you simply giving, the most prime example of Lisa help make you the best that you could be. And then you had a bunch of other teammates on the Olympic team that are all, same vision, same drive. That is so big. That is so big. And okay, so we're going to be airing this, one of the first few weeks of the year. So in 2023. And literally the first one is goal setting. Is there like a specific way you like to goal set, like now or in the past, that has helped you reach those goals? I know you talked about creating a plan.
Yeah. So for me, I really try to be specific about what I want the end result to be. And so, if I'm obviously, again, for softball, like I said, it was, the national championship. And then it was like, okay, um, you know, uh, I wasn't this specific. I'm gonna tell you an example, like a hitter. So I would obviously, mine was quality at bats. So I just took, stock in what are my quality at bats, like as a hitter. So my goal is to, have 90% quality at bats. If I, have a bad at bat, okay, I throw that one away. But one of my teammates, that I loved how she was more specific than me. She would say her goal, she was a leadoff hitter. One of the years, Amy Chelvolch, one of the years she led the nation in batting average by far. And she said, as a leadoff hitter, her goal was to get 1 hit a game. Okay. So that doesn't seem so crazy, right? Like
Hmm.
instead of, oh, just a game 3 for 3, but one goal. So she would say, so if I got to hit my first at bat, I'll be like, awesome. Okay. Now I can add to that. I'm going to go, I want two or whatever. She's like, but if it was a game where I was 0 for 2, I was like, okay, that's okay. I still got another at bat. I loved that mindset because it pushes you into positive. Now for
Yeah.
me recently, actually, in this stage of my life, I actually have a vision board. And so I put on my vision board, and for me, just more in the speaking realm. A book. I have my book that I want to be writing, and I have a couple companies I want to speak to, and I have a few things like that. And then even financial goals. Now I've never done that in my life until this past year. I had somebody working with me and said, "Hey, write this down." I'm like, "What?" Write down what I want to make financially, and honestly, it it is impactful. And so I had never done that. So that's on my vision board, and then my family, because that is priority. And so for me, it's a vision board of these very specific things. And then from that, on paper, I'll kind of write down things that need to happen. What do I need to do each month? What do I need to do each week? And then I'll make it more specific.
For those of you listening, she was literally looking to either her left or her right at her vision board. Like, it is literally up on her wall. And we've talked about creating a vision before, but like literally when you see it, just like we were saying earlier, you start to like live in that, like you're already there almost. So you like to go with the big and then kind of work backwards. I think that is, I've heard a lot of people say that is the big way to do it, probably the best way to do it, like create the baby steps along the way. So that is super inspiring. Now, overcoming obstacles. I think this one, it's like easier to say than do. Don't you think? Like, it's easier to say, oh yeah, like when a challenge arises, I'm just going to run through it. But like, does it take a special person to be able to overcome obstacles, or does it just take reps?
Okay. So I think it's how we view things. I think it's our mindset. It's funny because, well, one of the things, talking to Mike Candrea, my college coach, Arizona and Olympic coach, he said one of the things I noticed about all of you Olympians were you all were problem solvers. As soon as
Mm.
there was a problem, you guys immediately got to work, like figure that out. Okay, so maybe that was right how we were kind of wired a little bit, let's say, right? You're figuring out, so that you take those challenges, right, against pitchers, different things. But what's hilarious is my husband, I was talking about being a problem solver on one of my recent podcasts, and my husband listens to my podcast and he lives in the house with me. But we were in the car, and my son was, talking about something and kind of complaining. And then my husband's like, here's the solution. And then my husband's like, see? And I was cracking up because I was laughing, because I'm like, oh, yeah, normally it becomes like an argument and there's more going on. And he was like, immediately, solution. Here's the solution for you. And I was like, yes, okay, I'm going to definitely keep up with my podcast if my husband's going to listen to
I
it.
love that so much. I wish my husband listened. He only listens to ones that I tell him to listen to, but he's taking your advice. Like, be a problem solver. I love that. I love that so
I don't
much.
I don't know if I totally answered that, but here's what I would say. I think we can all get better at it. I think the
Mhm.
the biggest thing is us recognizing, what do I do when things get hard? Do I just sit and complain? Do I make excuses? Because a lot of people do that. And so it's recognition. And then what am I going to do with that? And then that's why, how can I solve it? So when I hear other people, I notice this in my regular life. I'm immediately like, okay, I want to step in, and here's what I need to do: take action in this direction.
Yes, beautiful. Now, leadership and dedication and drive, we definitely touched on, but you have an entire episode in your podcast about this acronym. Can you tell listeners about the podcast itself, maybe the vision of that podcast, and what you're excited for?
Yeah, the vision of the Gold Standard podcast with Leah Amico, because there's a couple that say Gold Standard. It really is to highlight core attributes and characteristics that help people become champions, that help people succeed in every aspect of life. And so I do like talking about how to overcome self doubt, how to overcome fear, because fear holds back so many people from the potential, and they can't turn it into performance when they're very capable. Just things, I want to encourage people and motivate them, because like you talked about, Ashley, who we hang out with or who we listen to can be a game changer for us. So early on in the podcast, I think we did about 18 interviews and episodes with elite athletes. a lot of Olympic gold medalists with softball, Olympic gold medal coach Mike Candrea, Patty Gasso, national championship coach from Oklahoma, as well as I was able to interview an Olympic luge athlete who was in 4 Olympics, a MLB player, a former NBA player. So I was able to interview these athletes who had played at the elite level in what they did, but were able to share those, again, core characteristics. I've shifted more recently to 3 times a week. We were only releasing the episodes once a week in the past, but now it's 3 times a week. And I just do short, quick, motivational, inspirational, hopefully filled with wisdom thoughts that I have that I believe have helped me to be able to do so many different things as a commentator for college softball, as a speaker, as an author, as a coach of the junior national team for Israel, all these different areas that are so diverse. And yet I'm able to take that standard into every aspect. And so my goal is that people are going to listen, be encouraged, make some changes, and ultimately live out the gold standard in their life.
As an avid listener of the podcast, those are all the things that I get from it. So I am not just saying that your podcast is great. I literally listen to it at least once a week. And what's so cool is you have so many different topics. So like whatever you're kind of going through right now, you can always scroll back and find it and kind of, talk about leadership, talk about, goal setting. So huge fan myself. And I'm so honored that you were able to come on this podcast. Now, I will put the links to your podcast into the show notes for people to find. Do you have a quick minute to answer a few 5 to Thrive questions that I have for you at the end?
Yes, I do.
Beautiful. Okay. So a lot of parents, like I said, listen to this podcast and they want to be better for their athletes. What are some core lessons that your parents taught you growing up?
Hard work always pays off, and to trust the process. That was something that I believe I learned young. They were not trying to make a way for me. They let me make the way, but they supported the work that I was putting in, and they put me in the best environment to put the work in.
So did mine. Great answer. I love that. What's your favorite thing about the game?
The challenge of it.
Malin
challenge
said
and
the same thing. Yes.
That's awesome. The challenge and the struggle, it's weird. Why would I like that, right? But when you win, like it's that competitiveness. And so if I'm up against a challenge, I did terrible in really easy games. When the game was the biggest and most on the line, that's when I usually played my best. And so that challenge, because you just find out what you're made of. And to me, being in the biggest battle is what's the most fun.
I am realizing the longer I interview you, the more I see myself in you. So this is crazy fun. If you could describe your game in 3 words or less, how would you describe it?
Okay. Consistent, joyful. I loved playing. Kendra always says you always saw Leah with a smile on her face. And teamwork. It's all about the team. I thrive on being with other people and lifting them up and being lifted up.
Now, you mentioned you didn't have many softball role models, but who was like the big one that maybe you had like a poster of, in your bedroom that you wanted to be like?
No, I didn't. I think I had like boy band pictures or something.
Okay, so did I. But you became the role model. So that's the cool part.
I did. And, I think more than anything, it's funny. I listened to Jenny Finch talk about it. Her dad was such a big Dodgers fan. So was my dad. Kirk Gibson hitting the home run in the World Series. Like, oh my gosh, I'll never forget that. And she was a lot younger than I was. But for me, I think that's what you saw was just this excitement. I was the oldest of 3 children, and my dad didn't have a lot of support, and he loved baseball. So when he got me in and I took to it, it was really fun for him. But sports, and it's just like my husband, like they just go crazy, right? Like when something good happens. I mean, we were yelling yesterday at the World Cup, watching the World Cup, right?
It was so intense.
Final ever. And for me, like at the end of that one, my heart's pounding. So the idea of just these moments that I know, like, I know what those moments feel like. And then you're watching them experience it. And so, yeah, so I would say like the Dodgers growing up in terms of just like that, in terms of athletics.
The team. That's awesome. Last question I have for you. What is one action item you hope people take from this interview?
That every one of us has an opportunity to be a difference maker, and that we can use the gifts God's given us. For me, it was softball. The fact that softball literally has taken me around the world and continues to, it blows my mind. So whatever that gift and that passion is, don't hide it any longer. Go out, figure out what it is, listen to these podcasts, and get inspired to take action, because Ashley, you doing this and you being able to share is impacting so many lives. And there's probably a lot of people on the sideline that are like, I wish I could do that. And I want them to know you can go
Mhm.
do it.
Yeah. I hated public speaking. Here I am behind a mic. Thank you so much, Leah. This has been such a gift to have you on the podcast. Would love to have you on again, maybe in the future. Not when we had to wait for my dog to finish grooming and it shortened up the episode. But seriously, the work that you're doing is so impactful, not only on, youth players now, but even me as a coach. So just want to thank you so much for your work and keep it coming.
Thank you. And keep making a difference, Ashley, because what you're doing is important and it's needed. And we all need to be reminded of just those really quality points. This game is amazing and the people we meet even more amazing. So thank you very much for having me.